Damas y caballeros, bienvenidos, bienvenidas nuevamente a un episodio de Bujinkast en el número 28. ¿Cuánto tiempo ha pasado desde que la última entrevista, no? Así que vamos a darle la bienvenida a mi compañero de fórmula, Santi Romualdi. Hola, Santi, ¿cómo estás?
¿Cómo va? ¿Todo bien? Emocionado,
Tanto-
Javi, la verdad, ¿eh? Hace mucho que no hacíamos esto.
Hace mucho, así que si tenemos alguna desprolijidad, pedimos perdón de antemano, ¿ok? Bueno, como les comentaba recién en Instagram, vamos a hacer la entrevista mayormente en inglés. Si nos empezamos a confundir las palabras, como nos va a pasar seguramente, vamos a poder hacerlo en español, así que bueno, preparen ahí el traductor y si no, en unos días van a ver ahí los subtítulos. Así que bueno, Santi, últimas palabras en español.
Ténganos paciencia, por favor, se los pedimos.
Eso, y disfruten mucho la entrevista con William Ustav en el día de la fecha. Así que, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being there in the other side of the screen. Welcome to the new episode of Bujinkast. Have you heard, we have talked in Spanish, but now we want to try to make the most of it in English. So, for flow on the interview, we're gonna do the English part. So, sorry for the bad pronunciations, some mistakes, funny mistakes, but we're gonna do our best. So Santi gonna be my backup in that area. So enjoy the new episode of Bujinkast. So we're gonna see now our guest star of the day in action. So here's the intro with William Ustav. Hola William, ¿cómo estás?
Hola,
Bienvenido.
buenas tardes. Hola, buenas tardes. Hi, how are you?
Very good, very happy to be here with you. An honor, a pleasure. Thank you very much
It's an
for
honor. The
accepting
honor is
our
mine. The
request.
honor is mine.
Oh, thank you. So, how's everything going in Sweden nowadays? We usually ask about the pandemic, the COVID situation, but it's like a century ago. So, how is it the things now?
I'd say things are pretty good. It's cold, but you know we're used to the weather, of course. So, and in the practice, everything is going forward as always. That's the most important.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Well, in the video we see a seminar. Could be.
Yeah. It was from the annual Swedish Bujinkast seminar. So in Sweden we have a like a federation or an organization that connects every club together, and every year there is a annual seminar organized by one dojo. So last year I had the privilege to organize this seminar and to teach at it. So these clips are from that time.
Okay. What was the theme of the practice?
The theme was Gyokuryu Koshijutsu.
Oh.
Yeah. So the basics of Gyokuryu, and you know how to move from kamae to kamae, how to strike, how to kick, and also how to use some of the weapons like sword, how to draw the sword in the way you use the sword in Gyokuryu.
Some people say there is no sword in Gyokuryu. Oh, at least I heard, but I guess they are.
That's not what I've been taught by my teacher, Kacem, and of course also Ishizuka Sensei. I've had the privilege to sit down and talk to him a few times about this, and he has mentioned that there is sword in Gyokuryu.
There's so many things that we don't know yet.
For sure. Yeah. It's just a scratch of the surface, and that's what keeps it interesting, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Well, one of the first questions that we used to do is how you start in the martial arts, how you start in the path of the Bujinkan. It was at the same time you practice another art.
Well, I think it all started when I was a kid, like maybe 7 years old, and my mother took me to karate, and she was always, sitting in the dojo watching me, and as soon as if I fell down or got hurt just a little bit, she would like yell out to the teacher, "What are you doing to my son?" and everything. So much later, when I was an adult, I talked to that teacher again, and he said, "Oh, I remember you. You're the reason why we had to keep parents away from the dojo." It's a fun way to being remembered by. But but that was just a few years when I was a kid, and then I started doing boxing in high school, and after that I found Bujinkan because I was really interested in ninja as a kid. And I knew that there was a ninjutsu dojo close to where I lived, but I never really got around to trying it until after high school, and I decided, okay, I want to do something Japanese, so let's try this dojo out. And I'm the kind of guy that when I start to do something, I go all in. I want to do it wholeheartedly. So for me, it was like, okay, here I am. There's no turning back. And I think, I think I was like, I was there at every class the first year, and there was no hesitation. And it was a club with, I think we were like there were like 7 black belts, and which was really cool, of course. And they were all like, "Oh, you don't have to buy like the clothes, the gi yet. You need to figure out if you want to do it." I was like, "No, I'm gonna start. I'll buy everything." Yeah. Just the first week. So of course I bought every book by Hatsume Sensei that I could find, and started reading every day, and of course, it was a very nice ambience. The feeling was very good in the dojo. I liked the people there a lot, but at the same time, I had a hard time, connecting with the fact that this was supposed to be a 900-year-old martial art. This was the secret art of the ninja, and it didn't quite look like that to my eyes. There was something missing. And in 2007, so less than 2 years after I started training in the Bujinkan, I went to my first seminar with Kacem Zoughari. It was in the Netherlands, and I remember I contacted his student Ferry, who was arranging the seminar, and I asked, "Is it possible to, if there's a Friday training class, is it possible to join it?" And he was like, "Well, it's a private class, but you are invited," which was a very kind thing for him to do to someone he didn't know at all. And I remember the first moment when I saw Kacem, I felt that, okay, this guy is something else. I had seen short snippets, short video clips of him, maybe like 10 seconds long before, which looked cool, but still you couldn't really understand or see if there was anything there. But I went with my my friend and then my instructor at that time, Richard. As soon as I saw Kacem and the first movement that we did, I realized, okay, this is something else. This is something else. And I was just recovering from a knee injury. And, just before the class started, Kacem was like, okay, let's do some, just for fun, some urawaza from Takagi Yoshinryu, sitting down on the knees. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So I sat down in Seiza, and at that moment, something popped in my knee. I was like, no. And I was like, oh man, this is going to mess everything up for the weekend. And Kacem looked at me. We barely had spoken, and he looked at me and was like, in the old days, we would cut your legs off and throw you out of the dojo. and I was like, oh man, I love this.
It was a joke, or it was kind of serious?
I think it was a joke. Okay. But that also motivated me to actually to heal the knee injury by practicing correctly. So this is something that I immediately noticed just from the first Friday class, that the way Kacem was teaching and the way that these martial arts are supposed to be taught and learned is through a, let's say, a biomechanically correct way of using the body, with the way of moving. So, for example, just the fact of aligning the knees with the feet was completely new to me. And just doing these types of movements actually made my knees, heal. So I didn't really have to do any surgery, which was otherwise a risk.
Yeah.
And I remember quite clearly the first class how we did uragyaku. But the way Kacem shows the basic uragyaku is with the same form as you would do tsuki when you break it up into different kamae. And the first movement is when you go back to ichimonji, and Kacem came to me and was like, you need to keep the weight on the back leg. And I told him, well, my weight is on the back leg. And he was like, no, it's not. I was like, yes, it is. It is. It's on the back leg, look. And of course, he just gently, slowly kicked my leg, and I couldn't move it. And then I realized, oh, okay, my weight wasn't on the back leg. And that was kind of an eye-opener to me, because that made me realize that, okay, everything is not as you always think that it is. And that really motivated me to start practicing on my own. So that weekend we did Kukishin Ryu Daken Taijutsu Okuden Gata. So like pretty much the highest level. But something Kacem said, which really stuck with me, was that Shoden wa Okuden nari. So and Okuden wa Shoden nari. So the first level is the highest level, and the highest level is the lowest level. So basically that means that you need to treat the basics as something very advanced, and the highest level, the advanced techniques, you need to be able to practice them in a basic way. So that's what we did, of course, with the highest level. But when I came back to Sweden, when I really started practicing was the tsuki, which I was able to see Kacem do, and then the kick, and of course just the kamae, ichimonji, just these things every day.
Yeah, the three basics, the highest level, the key to everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's I remember two quotes when you was talking about it. One was about the karate master that says, "The ultimate Kihon is the Kihon." There is no such thing that super secrets teachings. No. Do the basics. Try to do the basics.
Exactly. Often you see people doing like, okay, now we're practicing basics, and now we're practicing advanced techniques. And then when they do basics, they go into very low, sometimes impractical kamae, but very low and very stiff movements, very like rough movements. And then when they do advanced things, they try to copy or act like Hatsume Sensei when he's in his like 70s or 80s or even more. Which of course is not right, in my opinion.
Right, because I don't know, there is photo of Hatsume Sensei do tsuki in a way that it's all stretched up, with the all the body weight. I mean, we shouldn't, I guess, like you say, we shouldn't do what Hatsume Sensei is doing now, with the age of 80, 90. When we have, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, I mean, how Hatsume Sensei moving that when he had that age, right?
Yeah. And if you look at, I mean, just when people from the West started going to Japan, like of course, some people were there in the 70s, but if you look at like the 80s and 90s, when most people saw Hatsume Sensei, he was already, an old man in a way. So I think for me, what's been most important is to like try to find the path that he has walked, instead of just looking at what he's doing now. And especially, of course, if you have a master like Hatsume Sensei, he's not very, let's say, clear on what you need to do at every moment.
A ninja way.
Exactly. He's more like he lets people do as they wish. And I think that can be a good thing, but of course it can also be a bad thing. It's kind of like giving out rope, and then people are actually sometimes hanging themselves with that rope.
Right. It's like grab a weapon. If you don't know how to use it, you can cut yourself, or you can be a Genshin.
Exactly. So I think part of the practice is to decipher everything, and the best way to do that is, in my opinion, to find a good teacher that you really trust, and then to stick with him and that lineage. So for me, it was, when I found Kacem, I knew that, okay, this is the man that I want to follow. This is the guy I want to be like. This is whom I want to train with for the rest of my life. Because for me, the path was clear. And of course, after that first seminar, he came to Sweden, and I remember that first time in Sweden, 2008, when I was, first time for me with him in Sweden. I was like waiting at the door at the seminar, like maybe an hour before everybody else came. And I remember when Kacem came, I was like, "Hi, sorry," because I felt kind of embarrassed at the same time. He was, coming with the guy who was organizing the seminar, Pelle, and was, probably expecting to, have a moment on his own and focus a bit before. But I was there. I was like asking questions and everything, and then he told me at one point that it's okay. I was the same way with Hatsume Sensei and Ishizuka Sensei. And then I knew in my heart that, okay, it's okay. But I tried to, find everything that I could, take from his movements and practice it all the time on my own every day. And I think like a few seminars later, because I started going to different countries when it was having seminars like England, Germany, and I told him, in a very serious way, that I want to follow you. I want to be your student. I'm committed to this. And I remember he looked at me and he said, a lot of people have promised me many things, even my brothers. And that was it. So, and I realized that, for him, words like that don't really mean anything. You need to show with action that you actually mean it. And it was a few years later, after I first met him in 2010, that's when he accepted me as a student. And then he told me that, okay, now you're my student. Now you need to prepare yourself to go deeper. You need to practice more. You need to practice deeper. You need to dig deeper. And this was always, the theme: dig deeper. Don't just look at something and look at the surface. Dig deeper.
Take the red pill.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, well, that thing that takes time. Be a student of a master, right? Take time, take commitment, takes build a relationship. Right, it's something that maybe in the mainstream martial arts, it's more like modern. It's more immediately. It's hard to see that kind of commitment for real. Like you say, a lot of people say a lot of words, but actions.
Yeah, for sure.
Clear.
Yeah, and I think that's actually really hitting the nail, because it's all about action. It's all about the practice, and that's something that I really liked about Kacem. Of course, Kacem is a martial arts historian as well. He's a researcher. He's a PhD in classical Japanese martial arts. So he knows the theoretical side. He knows the studying part. I mean, he can read the old texts, and he has studied them, and he's been given access to them. But with him, everything always boils down to the practical, to the practicality of things. Even his field of study is about the practical side of how classical martial arts were transmitted. So of course you have the writings, you have the kuden, you have all of the, let's say, the theory, but the movement. How did the people, the masters of old, move? And how did they move 100 years later and 100 years later after that? And how are they moving today? Why? And I think that this is the key to really unlocking the difference between something like that we do in the Bujinkan, which is a very old martial art, compared to newer martial arts, be they Japanese or Chinese. This is the difference, to really dig into how the movement has changed and to actually try to find the way that the movement was meant to be done and how it was actually done and transmitted from Takamatsu Sensei to Hatsumi, and how Hatsume Sensei also transmitted it to his original group of students.
Okay. So to see if I understand it, it's not just to study the techniques or the things from the schools, it's just the process that we need to understand to get to the small details, right?
Yeah, I think so. And it's of course the process of the practice is one thing. You can't just let's say take a movement like a kick. You can't take a kick and then think, okay, how do I make it easier for me? And then you practice, oh wait, I can generate more power like this. Oh, I can do this. This is a better way for me to do it. But instead you need to dig how was I taught it? Maybe I didn't fully understand it at the moment. That's usually the case. So you need to study, you know, in many directions and try to trace it backwards to see how the movement is supposed to be done. And I think this is the strength of Kacem, my teacher, to actually put a kind of not a teaching method, but something, some sort of a method to learning this process. So some people think that the way Kacem teaches basics, or if they have seen him do a basic movement or something, then they go, oh, that doesn't work, or something like that. No, but that's because it's a basic movement that you're perhaps practicing to build the foundation for your kamae. You're building the tendons, the smaller muscles, the ligaments, and the flexibility, and also building an understanding to how to use that same body, that same movement with weapons. This is also important.
Yeah.
So there's like so many dimensions to this.
And one thing I was thinking about it, the thing you say the basics and how you connect basics to another basic, and when you practice, it doesn't seem real or effective. But in a moment that you naturalize it, or internalize it, and it's doing it in one motion, it's in, wow, what happened? I mean, a proper Suki doing the proper way, but with the proper practice, could be devastating.
I think that's what you just said was really important, especially when you said proper ski or a proper practice, because I mean, most people have sincere intentions. If you ask people, are you practicing correctly? They're not going to say, no, I tried to practice wrong. Or if you ask them, do you practice basics? They're not going to say, no, I don't practice basics at all. Basics suck. Most people say that basics are important, but the question is, what kind of basics? Right. And I think this was, you know, when you first time I met Kacem, when he told me to strike him, I would do the same way as 99.99999% of people in the Bujinkan would do, which is you show the punch with every part of your body except the one where you're, you know, gonna hit with. So you lean forward, or you pull your hand back, and you do all sorts of strange movements. And this is when Kacem was like, no, you need to cut off everything that telegraphs the movement, everything that shows your movement, that displays your movement before it's already there, before the strike connects. And this is, the aspect of moving in a visible way, like the ninja. That's my interpretation of where or part of where this type of let's say legend of the invisibility comes from. This cutting off everything that's unnecessary, this complete economy of movement. And of course this exists in most martial arts. In most martial arts you have this, but if you look at sports martial arts, you have a lot of focus on speed and power, which means that sometimes you can let's say compensate. So you maybe because you are faster than your opponent, you don't have to be as invisible in your movement, or you're more flexible, or you're stronger, so you manage to take so many hits and then you can just knock your opponent out. Whereas in this martial art, where everything is supposed to be for real practical use, then you need to cut down everything in your own movement. And this also is a way to practice how to look at your opponent and see what he's doing. So if you practice on your own to not do certain things, like to not lift your shoulder when you're going to strike, or to not lean forward first, or to not push with your legs in a certain way, or your feet in a certain way, and to not, pull back your hand first, then you can also see these movements in the opponent. And you start to be able to see these, let's say, to be able to read the opponent and to be able to intercept his attack. And of course, you can't just, theorize about this. You need to practice it,
exactly,
and in a kata way, but you also need to put a certain aliveness into it.
Right, exactly, because that's what I'm gonna say. It's very different when a person do a suki that you didn't expect at all, and suddenly you have the fist here. You say, how happened? And when a person, you see a lot in the newest person, when people just start in any martial arts, try to and try to, like you say, erase what is not necessary. And the big example is Hatsume Soke. When you see everyone say, I don't know what he did me, I don't know how he hit me, I just get hit in some part with some fist or something.
Yeah, but that's also, when you look at the way people attack Hatsume Sensei, sometimes he doesn't need to do much at all. And actually, there's a funny story, because the first time I went to Japan, which was 2008, so it's 1 year after I met Kacem the first time, and I remember we stayed in Ishizuka Sensei's dojo, me and Richard, and it was an epic journey, of course. I was like so pumped at every moment. But then, the first class with Hatsume Sensei, of course, I had introduced myself before. I spoke a little bit of Japanese already at that time, and I really wanted to do it properly. And of course, there were so many people, but nobody really dared to go up to him and say something. So I was like, okay, he's alone. I'll go up and talk to him. So
why not, right?
I talked to him a little bit, and then during class, I tried to stay close to where he was, in the back of the dojo, or the front of the dojo actually. And then I asked him, nobody did this. I asked him, could you please, show me, do it on me? And he was like, yeah, sure. And at that moment, I remember I was like, whoa, hold on. This is Hatsume Sensei. Am I gonna
say yes?
what kind of, do I strike him hard? Do I do it slowly like everybody else? Do I how do I, what do I do? So I kind of gave him I don't know, something, and some sort of slow ski, and he was just kind of took my hand and blew at my face or something. And I was like, okay. That was the level that he saw from me. He could just blow on me, and that was enough. But he did some really cool things during that trip, like, cute show, the face and everything. And I remember he had me pinned to the toilet door, which was right there. And it was cool. But then the next trip, which was, after that, it took me 5 years to come back to Japan, because I realized that, okay, I need to follow Kacem. I need to do what he's teaching me, because that's obviously the key. And since, he became my teacher as well at that point, so for me, it was natural. I tried to practice as much with Kacem as possible and study what he was showing me. So in 2013, I was back in Japan, and again, I was like, okay, this time I'm gonna strike Hatsume Sensei. And again, I asked him, and was like, yeah, sure. And again, I wasn't really happy with my ski. I can't say that it was Hatsume Sensei who did some magic on me. It was just that it wasn't a good ski. I could feel it. It wasn't committed, and at the same time, the timing was off with him. Then the next year after that, I was like, okay, now I can do it. And then I did it, and I remember clearly this feeling of how, I really, really went for it. Not in a, let's say, not in an arrogant way, not in a way that I would, I would, I think, be able to stop if I knew that he was like not ready or something like that. But I struck him, and he moved, just like a ghost, and just, an inch or less than an inch. And I remember feeling that, and then I was down. And then I was down. But of course, and then he made me realize something, because he said to me that he's not teaching fighting anymore. What he's doing is demonstrating how an old man can use this type of, or let's say, play with this type of movement and things. And this made me realize that, okay, it's not my place, and it's not really my, let's say, I don't have to test Hatsume Sensei. He's not the one I have to test, because he's not, like he said, he's not teaching fighting. If you look at what he's doing in Hombu, he's not teaching fighting. He wasn't teaching fighting. But what I really liked was that Kacem and Ishizuka Sensei both saw me do the strike at Hatsume Sensei. And afterwards, Kacem said that he saw that, and he really enjoyed it. And he was like, oh, Hatsume Sensei was not ready for such a good ski. And it was, so that really made me happy. And of course, pushed me to practice more and more.
Right.
So yeah, most people don't attack Hatsume Sensei at all, really.
Well, maybe for some people it's the magic, an invisible wall. I don't know. Maybe could be true. We don't know.
But do you think it's because they are being polite, or they don't have the guts to attack properly?
No, I think it's not about not having guts, because you have in the Bujinkan, you have some amazing people. You have people that have been to wars, that have actual fighting and even killing experience. It's not that they don't have the guts. I think it's, and I'm not saying that they are the ones that are attacking wrong or anything. I'm just saying that the way you are, let's say, brainwashed is maybe the wrong word, but the way you have been trained, programmed, that's a better word. The way you have been programmed to attack in the Bujinkan, the way you have been programmed to attack in these kind of situations, that's what has created this type of illusion. And at the same time, Hatsume Sensei, if you look at all of the DVDs and videos that you have of him going back to the Taikais of the 80s, then he responds to what he gets. So if he's given, like, if you bring out a kickboxer that comes with a flying spin kick, okay, that hasn't happened, but I'm pretty sure that he would have had a good response to that. Just as, when someone comes from 15 feet away like this, and just throws a punch slowly in the air somewhere around Hatsume Sensei, then he has a response to that as well. Then he moves, does something, and nobody really questions that, because it's the way things are.
Okay.
Yeah, they should take the red pill.
Yeah. I think for me, when it comes to the striking, for example, this is, if you look at any martial art that has merit and value, then they share a few common things. They have a knowledge of the center line, for example. They're not pulling the hand back like this, and they're actually trying to understand the shortest distance between the weapon and the target. And these things, we have everything of this in our schools and in the Bujinkan. And it's just a matter of, I think, opening the eyes and just looking for it.
Right. And try to go deeper, right?
Yeah.
Try to go a little bit deeper.
Exactly.
I remember training with Oscar. I'm training with Oscar like a year from now.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
Yeah, definitely.
He's in the chat right now, so.
Oh, hi, Oscar.
Hola, okay. So I remember one of the first things that when I train with him, I do a sempogeri, and I do a sempogeri with the step, like going forward with the step. You say, pero así te vas a caer. You're gonna fall off doing that. And I said, yeah, but everyone doing like that, the sempogeri and the push, and always tell me it's like the 300 movie kick, and you go forward. Yeah, but you're gonna fall. They're gonna grab you. So why don't put back the leg when you kick? So
I think that's very interesting, because you have so many, even Japanese shihan. Like if you look at one of the staples and basics in most people's training is the kind of kirikaishi, where you have the attacker commit fully, and not in a correct way, to be honest, with the kick, and then falling forward, so he's already lost there, and then you kind of like pull his leg out. And it's like you don't need to be a martial artist to be able to do that, because that's a bad attack. If someone attacks you like that and is, let's say, committed to either he manages to kick you, or he sacrifices himself completely, it's a strange attack. Of course you can have it. You have it as a basic in a way, but you need to be able to use it properly, I think, and also not to create all of your techniques around it. Even if you look at Hatsume Sensei, most people attack like that, and he just has to like very lightly pull his own leg out, and then the guy falls down. It's not something that you really have to, be a soke to be able to do. if the person attacks in that way. And for Hatsume Sensei, I think it's, like I said before, he responds to what he gets.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting, because there's person that push him, like you with the suki, that proper suki you do at that time. Maybe we can be able to see even more mind-blowing things of school.
Definitely. But at the same time, I think that honestly, the level that Hatsume Sensei has been at for so long is it's obviously very high, and I think that in the next 10 years, I'm probably gonna see everything in a completely different light, and 10 years after that, because this is the way it's been for me since I started training with Kacem. It was like just the first months, it was like, oh, wait a minute, I can I can recognize this movement of Hatsume Sensei and what Kacem is doing, and like small things, and then more and more, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, this was, and then it kind of, the more you practice, the more you can see. I remember there was quite a few examples where, like the first time I went to Japan in 2008, I of course, we lived in Ishizuka Sensei's dojo, so we had classes with him almost every day. For a week, he was actually in Hawaii, which was very unfortunate for us, but we were there 3 weeks, so we were able to go to Someya Sensei's dojo at that time and have classes with him twice a day. But anyway, but I was, of course, focused on Ishizuka Sensei, and because he's the teacher of my teacher. So for me, the lineage was clear. I need to look at what Ishizuka Sensei is doing and follow that. But sometimes there were, instances when Ishizuka Sensei would do something in a different way from what I had seen from Kacem. And also from, of course, I wrote everything down that Ishizuka Sensei showed me, and he wrote down the names of the techniques, because at that time, the book Unarmed Fighting Techniques of the Samurai, which has most of the kata names and everything, it had not been published yet. It was actually published the last day when I was in Japan, so I bought it in Japan. But Ishizuka Sensei would take the time after class and write down the names of the techniques and everything, which was so amazing and inspiring for me. But sometimes there were moments when he would show something different from what Kacem would do. And in my mind, at first glance, it was like kind of an overload. Like, wait a minute, what's happening? This is Kacem's teacher. How is it possible that? But for me, it was simple. Kacem was my teacher. He was the one I wanted to follow. So naturally, I chose to do it the way that Kacem showed me. However, that didn't mean that I disregarded what Ishizuka Sensei did. No, I practiced that as well, or I, stored it, let's say, somewhere in the back of my mind and in my notes. And then, later, with practice, then Kacem would say, oh, and then, of course, you have this way of doing it, but this is because of this, this. Or you have this level of doing this inside this technique. And then it's like, wait a minute, that's what Ishizuka Sensei was doing. And then suddenly everything makes sense. And then I was like, man, but if I had been doing it the way Ishizuka Sensei was showing it, if I would just, try to copy it only that way, without having the proper guidance along the way, then I don't think I would have, be able to come to the same conclusions.
Right.
So this is like an ever-evolving process, and you can't just take anything at face value. Okay, I saw Hatsume Sensei do it this way, then that's how it is. No, there are like so many layers. You need to know why he's showing it like that, to whom he's showing it like that, at what level he's showing it, what is he thinking of while he's showing it, what did he receive from the opponent when he was showing it, and all of that. So yeah.
It's you had to do the path, walk the path.
Yeah,
there's no shortcut about it, and maybe have the hope that you're gonna reach there, even though it's not it doesn't understand right now. Maybe in a few years, in a few days.
Exactly. There was one moment when I was doing practicing the technique. It was a technique from Gyokuri, from the second level, and I was, I asked Ishizuka Sensei, so why does the opponent attack in this way? Why? And he looked at me, and I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have asked that. and he said, Ryu ga ato. So the meaning, the reason comes later. And then later, I understood it, or at least a part of it, because, like I said, understanding is an ever-evolving process. But that's the thing, that if you need to practice things in a certain way and trust the, let's say, the transmission because then the reason will come after, through practice. It's not going to come, just you're lying in bed and then like, oh, now I understand. It's when you're practicing. It's when you're practicing, you get these epiphanies and you understand, and then it kind of builds upon each other all the time. So it's a process. It's a process.
It's that little enlightenments, and then you keep practicing, because maybe there's another light that's gonna come, right?
Yes.
But like you say, as the trust in the process, the word trust again, trust with the teacher, trust the teacher in you as a student, trust in the process of the methodology of the training. That's, like I said before, commitment, and of course, patience.
Yes. This is the art of patience. It really is. But I think that it's not just patience that for some people practicing is just going to the dojo 2 times a week, 3 times a week. But something that Kacem told me early on that really stuck in my heart was that practice is what you do on your own every day, all the time, and then you apply it in the dojo. So the practice is alone. It's not that you train and then you also do the practice alone because you have to. Oh, now we have COVID. We need to find a way to practice on our own. No, it was like, for me, practice during COVID was like, it's exactly the same, except that I don't train with other people as well.
Right,
because that's kind of the bonus, because you need to practice. If you look at the old manuscripts, the densho and the makimono of the old masters, when they give a transmission to the next student, and this is something that Kacem has written about in his thesis, and you can find it in so many makimono. It's always something to the effect of, keep practicing day and night, keep practicing all the time. It doesn't mean that you need to, or that you're supposed to stay in the dojo with a bunch of people all day and night. It means that you need to, kind of focus your life in a way that you can always stay in practice and actually physically practice on your own, so that even if you're sitting having a webcast like this, then you can practice sitting in Seiza or in doing these kinds of things, and also to focus your life around finding the ways to practice. And this is something I remember when Kacem told me at one seminar, it was like in, I think 2010 in Slovenia, during lunch. He said that he would have a seminar. When Kacem is teaching a seminar, you guys have met Kacem, I think. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. Okay,
not in person.
So when Kacem has a seminar, he goes around and shows on everybody. Not like he teaches and then he stands in a corner and So he goes around and shows everybody, and he really commits. And he's been that way since the first time I met him. And he told me that after a seminar, he would go back to his hotel room, rearrange the furniture, and then practice. And then after the practice, then he would take a bath or something like that to relax. But that's how his vision of the word practice really, let's say, changed how I view the word practice. Practice is something you really need to commit yourself. You really need to find the way to practice, even if you've just been training at a seminar, and then you come to your hotel room and you still need to practice. That really inspired me.
Right. It's like you say, take action.
Yeah.
Take action, not only words, action. I mean, talking is an action, writing the words is an action, but how is the weight on that words, right? Makes the action. Okay. We see in your screen the Hirameki Dōjō, right? That's the Hirameki Dōjō.
Yes.
I can see. It's quite beautiful. I see.
Thank you.
Nice weapons.
It's in the basement of my house. We moved to a house last year, and my wife always wanted to move to a house, and my only prerequisite was, okay, but we need to have a place for a dojo. Then we can move to a house, and people need to be able to get there. That was the only thing important.
The condition.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The contract.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and again, of course, everybody doesn't have this opportunity that I have. But back when I started training with Kacem, I lived with my mother, and I had, just small room. And I remember I had my desk here and my bed here, so I was, just able to squeeze myself in between with the ball, to practice bofuri and everything. And to not break anything in my room, and you need to be able to make the space work, and to adapt to everything. This was and that's what the story with Kacem and the hotel room really taught me, that there are no excuses. You need to be able to practice. You don't need to have a dojo. The dojo is where you are.
Right. Okay.
Right.
It's funny, William, because you just described my bedroom. I have a desk, a bed, and zero space.
Grab the ball, Santi, and show us a furigata.
Not today.
Okay. Well, one thing I was thinking about confinement and the small spaces, maybe the COVID was a good thing in the practice, so people can discover the Hittori Keiko, the practice alone. Maybe a lot of people doesn't practice alone until COVID happened.
Yeah, I think so. And but that's, it was always funny to me that people were like, "Oh no, I can't train. I haven't been training," and it's like, why? I mean, what were you doing before? But that's the thing. I think that for a lot of people, the Bujinkan training can be, let's say, a bit, hard to grasp. The way some people train, you don't really have a form even, and then you don't really have something to practice. You need to have something concrete, something to polish. And this actually reminds me of a story that Kacem told in 2008 in Sweden, and I've told it so many times after that. I've kind of made it my own in a way, but it goes something like this. So you would have, in the old ages, in a land far away, you would have a master. And he was a master in a certain, let's say, teaching, whether it's a martial art or something more philosophical. And he had a few students. Let's say he had 4 students. One was his oldest, most trusted student, and then and the other ones were like maybe the second one, and then you have finally the one that maybe had just followed him for a few years, but generally they had given up everything for him and followed him. And one day the master summons his students around the campfire and says, "Tomorrow at break of day, when the sun goes up, let's meet here, and I will give my farewell to you. I'm going to leave you, and but I will just make everything right and tell you how you're going to keep on." So the students, of course, they're nervous when the master leaves, and they can't sleep that night. They're so excited in a way, also because something new is happening finally. Maybe they've been a bit, bored that things have been going the same way. They've been, they feel they have already learned everything, but at the same time, it's kind of like, is the master really going to leave us? How's everything going to go on? And of course, the oldest student, he knows that he's going to be the next one. So he's expecting some sort of, let's say, a diploma or something that he can really, show to the world that he's the one. To get his own followers, of course. And he's already making plans with the next guy and saying like, you're going to be my right-hand guy, you're going to, be my successor, and et cetera, et cetera. Already making plans. And at the break of day, the master comes and he has a small bag with him. And from that bag, he doesn't say anything. He just puts out 4 gray, ugly stones, rocks in front of them. And then he goes away. I like to imagine that he's just, in a puff of smoke, disappears. Exactly. But he goes away. And, the guy who was like expecting something, who was like really expecting to receive a diploma or at least some words of meaning or something like that, he's like, man, all I got was I followed this man my whole life. I gave him everything. Screw this, I'm out of here. And he says, so long guys, it's been a fun ride. And he leaves, goes to the closest town, and starts doing everything that he had given up, that he had not done. Everything, drinking, women, everything, you name it. And then the next guy is like, okay, a rock, sure. He also leaves. Bye guys, it was nice. Starts a family, keeps the rock somewhere, maybe under the bed or something, and almost never thinks of it. Sometimes the teachings of his old master, of course, they come up and he talks about them, but that's pretty much it. And the next one, maybe also, still, also maybe builds a family and keeps the rock somewhere, so everybody can see it in his home. And he's like, yes, I was a student of this master and he gave me this rock, and it was very, very interesting. And, he at least he passes on the tradition and what he had learned. And then you have the final one, the less important one, the one that nobody really, he wasn't even worthy to carry the shoes of the master before. And he's like, whoa, I got a stone, a rock from the master. He gave it to me. It's like he had never received anything from the master. The master barely had looked at him. So he starts polishing it. He's still staying in the mountains, polishing it all the time, from every angle, all the time, polishing. He sleeps on the rock. He polishes it all the time until one day it's a diamond. So everybody had received the diamond, but of course you need to polish. You need to physically, actually polish and take care of the rock for it to become the diamond.
To earn it.
Yeah, exactly. And that, rock is the actual, let's say, the basics or your practice. You need to polish. You need to practice for this to become the diamond. It's there, but you can hand out as many rocks as you want, but maybe only a few people are actually gonna make them into diamonds. But of course, if you just like, okay, it's a diamond, I need to and you build a machine to polish it or something like that, then maybe that's not the way it's supposed to be done. But you get the meaning. Man, you need to polish.
Yeah, I love the story. It rings me a bell.
Yeah. I remember when Kacem told that story, I was like, whoa. I remember getting goosebumps, all over my body.
Exactly what happened to me. What happened to me.
Yeah. Awesome. It was really changed me in so many ways. And that's, that's what I, let's say, like about the practice and being with Kacem, is that there are so many moments like that when he kind of changes everything. And again, it can be something like, okay, you've been practicing a certain movement or a kamae or a kata or something like that, in a certain way. And then he suddenly, like, he changes it a little bit. And maybe sometimes you're not even sure if, did he change it or did my perception and understanding change? But it doesn't really matter, because then it's kind of like a goosebump moment again. It's like, whoa, hold on. And you suddenly see more clearly. And I think that's, you know, when the practice is done correctly, I feel that you can almost start to work on certain things and practice on certain things and experiment in a certain way that you can almost anticipate what the master is going to teach you. And this has happened to me so many times that I kind of, you know, in my practice, I start to really dig in on something. Let's say it's a kamai, like, oh, wait a minute, like the Hiraichi Monji no kamai, you know, to go deep and do this. And I try to really like dig in this all the time. And me and Richard, we talk about it like all the time. And then I remember when I went to Japan, I think it was in 2019, yeah. And suddenly Ishizuka Sensei was like, he started, I mean, everything that he did was about that. That same thing that I had been working on. And of course, it was, nobody had tipped him off. Nobody had said, hey, you know, William is practicing this right now, so can you do this? But it was, you know, it's, I can't really explain it. And it's happened to me so many times with Kacem as well. But I think it's kind of a natural aspect of the practice that what you're practicing, what you're digging, it's so deeply connected to the path of the master as well, that you really kind of, you glance, you try to figure something out, and then he shows you how it's supposed to be done. So it's a kind of, you're walking on your own, but the master still, you know, is leading you, you know.
Right. I get it. Awesome. Yeah, that kind of feeling happened. It happens, especially when I start training under Oscar. It happens. Yeah. I will read some of the comments in the chat. Okay, sure. Like we say, Oscar Barcela, saludos desde Córdoba. Buen viaje, Oski. Hablando de ti. Bujinkan Dōjō. Hello, everyone. Richard M. Nice memory from that trip.
Yes,
maybe.
that's my partner in crime.
Well, I got a funny story with Richard. He do some videos about ukemi a long time ago.
Oh yeah, yes.
And I remember when I was trying to practice parkour, and that kind of video, one of the first one I saw. I mean, it's awesome that it was your teacher, it's your student. Can't believe it. Well, talking about connection, right? Yeah. Oscar, I just want to say hi to William and thank him for all the interview and clips he made with Kacem. That we're a huge inspiration, of course. Too. Thank you very much for that. Shai David, hello everyone. Richard again. Maybe explain a bit about randori. Okay, we can go with that.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah. Richard, he knows what to ask. No, but I think that first of all, I think it's very easy to fall into different traps. When it comes to the training. So you have the trap of always, let's say, just, you know, practicing just kata. But that's also, just me saying that is a trap, because you can practice kata in so many ways. That practicing kata is not necessarily just one way. I would say that randori is a part of kata, depending on how you look at it. But at the same time, if you just look at, you know, like sparring, then you know, some people maybe start sparring too early, or they they make sparring the focus, and it's very easy that sparring becomes the focus, and then you kind of lose track of what you're actually trying to do. So the goal is to learn the way of using the body according to a certain school or a ryuha. And if you just start sparring so that the movements are looking more like, you know, bad kickboxing or bad MMA, then you're not following the flow of the school. You're just doing your own thing. So I think that you need to find a way to make randori work for you. So it's a lot of experimentation there. I remember Kacem told me from the beginning, at almost every seminar, he's been like, go down to your local kickboxing club and test your ichimonji, you know, see what happens. See what happens when you face someone like that. And I did. And I remember during sparring, for example, I was, you know, keeping my kamae like this. And it was quite open here. And I got knocked out twice with a kick to the solar plexus, with a round kick like this, bam. And this, of course, taught me to, okay, yeah, I need to protect myself. And this is what, you know, Kacem had already shown me. I just didn't have the eyes to see it. So that's one aspect. You need to get kicked or hit to be able to learn. But also you need to find a way to, I think, to create a meaningful randori, a meaningful, not sparring. I mean, randori means that you insert an element of, let's say, chaos or let's say something unexpected, that it's not fixed. So this can be just like you're practicing, let's say, a Kukushin Ryudaken Taijutsu technique, and you adapt by moving from one technique, from one finishing movement to the other. So you start to do, let's say, an onikudaki, and then you move into a seoi nage based on the response you're getting from the other person. But this also is it's not that easy to just suddenly start practicing that, because if the person you were training with is like, you know, starts tensing up or doing something else, then that's not a meaningful practice. That's just making life difficult. And that's just making you feel like, oh, I can't do anything. This all sucks, you know, it doesn't work. You need to be able to start building it up slowly. And so in a way, I think randori can also be a mindset. Sometimes you can practice a kata and it almost feels like you're doing randori. And you can do it and you can insert elements of randori. For example, the basic way, which I think is a great way to practice, for example, when you practice the tsuki and the other one has to do a response, is that the guy is standing in shizen and, you know, does a tsuki, bam, you know, in a very invisible way, so that you only have this split second to make the movement work. Exactly. That's one aspect. But then you can say, okay, let's both go into kamae, for example, and let's just add the element of moving around, so we're not standing still. You have this, for example, in kotoryu, when you look at the levels where the opponent is walking towards you.
Right. Yeah.
And he comes close enough, and then either you intercept his actual movement, or you intercept his mind making the connection to initiate the movement. But you can do this in let's say, more graspable way by you know, both people moving a little bit, and then you find the opening and strike, and then you apply the technique. This is something that I learned from the beginning, but I haven't always been good at it, and that's to experiment. This is something Kacem has always said. You need to experiment. You need to dig. So digging and experimenting with everything. You can't just say, okay, now I have my tsuki, 1, 2, 3. You need to be able to do the tsuki from every angle. You need to practice it in all situations. You need to apply it to all weapons. I remember when, if you read interviews with Kacem and what he has also shared with me and everybody else, when he went to Japan the first time in 1989, he came back with 3 techniques, or let's say tsuki, uke, keri, and ichimonji no kata and the bojutsu kata as well. But do you think that he was just going 1, 2, 3, or from kamae 4, and then practicing kicks 1, 2, uke 1, 2, 3, and that's it? No, he was experimenting, applying it in so many different angles and variations, and digging, while still keeping the, let's say, it's polishing the stone. So he's not like, oh, wait a minute, I like that rock even more, I'm gonna polish this one as well, and oh, wait a minute, that's a diamond already, I'm gonna take that one, and oh, this one. No, just that same rock, but polishing it in different ways. What happens if I polish it here? Oh, what happens if I polish it here? Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should put some water on it. What happens then? Okay, that didn't really help. Okay, what if I put it in fire? What happens then? And that's the sort of polishing process that you need to do, and that's randori to me. You need to experiment from different sides, and also it's a martial art. You need to be able to, at one point, if a guy practicing karate or MMA or kickboxing comes in and wants to not even spar, but just gently touch gloves, let's say, just do something, then you can't just go, oh, wait a minute, what? How do I? Wait, it doesn't work like that. You need to be able to do something, because the difference is not that huge. I mean, of course, I was talking about, this is a martial art where you need to go into the past and really find how the movement was made back in the days, and try to, let's say, discover this or rediscover this in your body and reprogram your body to fit the ryu. But at the same time, it's still kicking, striking, and avoiding. And grabbing and throwing and locking and everything. So you need to practice this. If you look at a karate guy who is, let's say, practicing his kicks 1,000 times a day and his strikes 1,000 times a day, then you can't just say, oh, what I'm doing is different. In our school, we're not really practicing the kicks that much. They just appear naturally, or something like that. It's crazy. Then you need to practice. If he does 1,000, you need to do 2,000. That's, or at least you need to attempt to do it. I mean, I could not live with myself if I at least did not try, or did not attempt to polish all of the aspects of what we have in this martial art. And that's why it's good to look at what are different martial artists and different martial arts doing with these same movements. And that's what was interesting, for example, when I was in the US with Jesse Enkamp. And we met with Michael Jai White. You can of course see this video. It was an epic journey, and the video is quite epic as well, I have to say. But for example, at one point he was showing a movement that was so similar to what we have in Gyokuri, in Koku. Of course, he did it with his way of using the body, the way he is, the way he is moving. And he explained that this was a, let's say, like a secret weapon that a quite famous UFC fighter had been working on. And they had been doing sparring, and he learned this from that fighter. But this was basically Koku, or a part of Koku. And And again, this goes to show that we have so much in our martial art. It's a question of how do we practice it. So the question is, who do you think is better at applying this movement from Koku? Is it the UFC fighter or some, fat guy from the Bujinkan, who's been practicing for 40 years,
Right.
It's because the way you look at a technique is different. So coming back to what I talked about in the beginning, you need to strive to find the practicality while keeping in the flow of the teachings of the Ryuha. And that's I think you need to have a compass, you need to have a map, you need to have a compass to not lose your way. And that's when you start sparring too much. If you just do sparring, first of all, you're going to get injured if you spar too much, if you spar too hard, and then you can't practice. Then it's no longer the the ninjutsu, the path of endurance or perseverance. It's you're injured and you can just read a book.
Right.
So you need to keep your body healthy. That's one aspect, but you need to always stay focused on what did your teacher show you. What did your teacher show you, and how? What did he transmit to you? And that's the flow. That's the transmission. And if you start doing like too much of your own things, then it becomes the jikoryu, your own style. And that's of course something that I remember from the beginning when I went to Japan. Hatsume Sensei said it many times. Sumeya Sensei said it. Don't create your own style. I remember,
even though,
yeah, many people are doing it,
and yet we are here.
Yeah.
Even though, yeah.
And I remember Hatsume Sensei said in 2008 that to be able to do what he's doing, you need to study each Ryuha thoroughly. I wrote that down in my book, and I repeated it to myself. You need to study each Ryuha thoroughly, completely, deeply.
Yeah.
Could you
sorry,
throw some light on that thoroughly? What do you mean with that? Or what do you understand with study every Ryuha thoroughly?
I think for me it means that for some people it's like you can just you can take Bujinkan as I don't need to learn the different schools. This is the Bujinkan. This is like a mix of everything. Yeah, maybe, but at the same time, if you look at the material that you have in the schools, and if you practice them and try to not necessarily separate them during class. I mean, sometimes you can practice several different schools in one class, let's say, and then tie them up together, because it's all the same movement in the, let's say, the common thing is the same movement, but as long as you try to separate them a little bit, at least in the beginning, then I think you can. It helps to dig, and then when you separate them, then you can not separate them and put them together again. It's kind of like when you get some Lego. In the beginning, you have the instructions, and then you do it according to the instructions. So you have the ninja Lego, you have the like the Lego friends with the girls and everything, and then you have the city Lego and everything, and then you build the fire truck, you build the milkshake wagon, and you build a ninja training camp. And then when you have all of these, then you start picking them apart and putting them together, and you create something amazing. But still, the pieces are still there from the ninja Lego. You have the pieces from, and sometimes you can see, wait a minute, this is the same piece. They're using the same pieces here. It's not that different. Like, oh, wait a minute, the ninja guy is the same as the fashion model here, and it's just a different paint. And then you can start doing things.
Right.
And that's what I think. Studying the schools thoroughly is That's kind of my view on it. But it also means, to study and like really read everything and try to get a hold of everything you can read and study, because there's so much out there.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's a question from Mark Spada. Thank you, Mark. Hello, William. Could you please share any opinions you might have on the subject of sparring and pressure testing as they relate the study of the 9 Ryuha? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that ties in, of course, with the randori, but I think it's an important part. And in a way, I mean, sometimes when, for example, when I'm with Kacem and he's teaching me something, or we're at a seminar, and I'm just, his uke or any type of situation, sometimes it almost feels like it is a bit of pressure testing on both sides, as if, because I've been with Kacem since 2007, so it's a long time. He's one of the most important people in my life, and I know him quite well, but I'm a student. I see myself as his disciple, even though I am his friend. I would say I'm still his disciple first and foremost, and he's my master. And during this interaction of uke and tori, sometimes it can be almost like a sparring, like a pressure testing, in a way that when he does something, then just my hand kind of goes towards him by nature, because there's an opening, and he takes care of that, and he moves, and he does this and this, and sometimes I have like the feeling afterwards, like, wait a minute, what really happened there? Oh yeah, we did, okay. And then I kind of learned from that. But to answer Mark's question, I think that, again, like I said before, sparring it's a tool that can be used to different degrees and in different ways. I prefer to use the word randori because it sparring to me is a bit more limited. Pressure testing is good, but at the same time, it's not really. Maybe aliveness is a better example. You need a word that can encompass many things, because again, it's not black and white. There's so many levels of pressure testing. I mean, one way of pressure testing is to pay someone to try to assassinate you on your way to work. That's one way of pressure testing. But obviously, that's not the same as if you're telling your friend in the dojo, okay, can you like try to hit me like stronger, or here, you put these gloves on and try to attack me. These are different types of pressure testing. So you need to understand that first and foremost. That you need to be honest with yourself. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. You need to be honest with yourself, with your own level, and with both what you're capable of and what you're trying to achieve at the moment of the randori when you're practicing in a certain way. Sometimes you take a specific movement, like, okay, let's work on the guys attacking with just 2 strikes. And he's not. It doesn't necessarily have to be fast or hard, but at least like 2 strikes where he's actually pulling his arms back and everything. It's not just the normal ski as we see in the Bujinkan. So this can be a certain way of putting a concept in. Let's say you want to do a mushadori on one of the arms, so you try to do it in that context. And then, okay, let's add the possibility of the attacker being able to kick you as well. How does that change things? And now let's add that you can also kick him in this way. And also just, randori can also be, if you look at like the way you do the ski and uke in Kukushinryu, you can just first practice the ski and uke combinations that you have in the kata. And then you can slowly ask the other one, your training partner, to attack you with a random sequence, and you need to be able to do your uke without, like, reacting in a like this. So you need to slow it down until you can really have the same flowing speed as the opponent, and then only then you can do it faster, step by step. But of course, all of this is, there's so much to do, and there's so little time. So it's a question of also having your own priorities, and if you have a 2-hour class, how much of that are you gonna put into this kind of movement? How much are you gonna put into actually polishing first the kihon in the kihon way, and how much are you gonna do sword? How much are you gonna do? There's so much.
Right. Well, people, you have training tips for start randori, huh? So, one question about randori I have. Have you tried randori with weapons, with padded weapons, or just with taijutsu?
No, with sword we do it a lot. We actually, I think we have pretty much started doing more sword at first, and then that led us to practice randori. In the beginning, mostly me and Richard, we were also doing randori both with and without gear, like headgear or gloves and everything. And it's the same when it comes to the sword. So if you have like the fukuro shinai, like the soft bamboo shinai with some leather or something on, that's, I think, a good weapon for practicing the randori. And again, it's the same thing here. It's you need to be able to apply the kata in a way. No, let's say you need to practice randori to be better at kata, and then kata to be better at randori at the same time. It's like yin and yang. But you still need to be able to have a clear vision of what you're trying to accomplish, so that you're not changing your movement to fit randori, because then you're gonna go like, oh, wait a minute, this I'm gonna not use this movement because this movement doesn't work in randori yet for me, because I can win against my friend when I do this one more. Or that's an important aspect. Randori or sparring, let's say, should never be about competition. It should be about getting better. You need to, when you have, let's say, when you've done randori, when you have done some sparring, you need to be able to know, okay, I learned this, I did this. It needs to be not just I managed to hit him a few times. Oh, you need to know why in that case. So it's good to have like certain goals. For example, with the sword, it can be like, okay, I need to be able to apply a certain technique. I want to do this one where I go with 2 strikes like that, let's say, 2 horizontal cuts. And then you keep that in mind and try to find openings for that. Or it can be like a mental aspect that, okay, I need to be able to drive the opponent back with my mental, let's say, strength at one point, and see if that works. Or I need to be able to feint with the sword, and how do I do that? How does he react, and etc.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. One thing I was thinking about is here you possible do it the circles with the sword of the opponent, right? To practice in randori. That could be very, very, very. I got a few questions. Sí, Santi. Dale para adelante.
Sorry, William. Something that we didn't ask before. What's the meaning of Hirameki Dōjō?
Okay.
Hirameki.
Yeah. So, That's a very good question. That's a very good question, because in 2013, I remember I went. It was in Japan, and we were staying in Ishizuka Sensei's dojo, and Kacem was there, and it was a moment when I went to Kacem and said, "Look, I'm gonna, there's a place in our building that I might get, the contract for, so we can open like maybe our own dojo or something." I mean, I didn't really know how to ask this. Was this appropriate of me? I thought maybe, it's good. And it was like, yes, perfect. That's really good. You need to do that. I was like, whoa, okay. And it was like, oh, I'm gonna find a name for your dojo, so just, and he checked a few scrolls or densho that night, and the next day he came and told me that the name of the dojo should be Hirameki Dōjō, and Hirameki is it's like a flash of lightning. So of course you have this kanji. You can find it in Kotoryu, in Shinden Fudoryu. You have it many places, and again, it's crazy how sometimes when you learn a new word. I remember this as a kid when I learned a new word. It pops up everywhere, and it was the same with Hirameki in that that class, because it popped up everywhere. Hatsume Sensei was talking about Hirameki, and Ishizuka Sensei, it always popped up. And another aspect of the word Hirameki is like it's kind of when you receive get a flash of inspiration, when you understand something. It's like and that's also a Hirameki. And much later, I also realized that when you look at the kanji for Hirameki, it's made of two different kanji. So you have gate, mon, and person, jin. And of course, the word monjin is the old word for student or disciple. So basically, in that kanji, you also have it. The meaning is disciple. So for me, it's that's the meaning, actually, not just lightning. It's cool to have lightning fast strikes and kicks, but it's even cooler to be a good disciple. So that's, for me, that's the meaning of Hirameki.
Okay.
Monjin.
Awesome. The Hirameki. William, another question that I have around about the Jesse Enkamp and the karate nerd, and of course the interact Bujinkan with other martial arts. First of all, how do you met Jesse Enkamp?
Well, I actually, I met Jesse Enkamp when we were filming with Kacem. So it hasn't been released yet. It's going to be released soon, hopefully.
Drop the bomb.
And so that's how we met, and I can say that we clicked in a way, and I was able to accompany him and film him. For example, we when he did the Kung Fu tournament in Sweden with the drunken fist style, I filmed them at that competition, and then sometime later, we were exchanging ideas and talking, and of course I had been following his videos for many years, so it was an honor, honestly, to meet him, and he's a great guy. And we went to Germany, to the Shaolin Temple, to film with Master Shihan Yi, and that was an amazing adventure, I have to say. And yeah, I mean, Jesse is a great guy, great practitioner of karate. He's very open, and he, from what I can tell, he picks something up, he learns so fast, and he's able to incorporate that into his movement. And he's a very open guy, very nice guy.
Okay.
Well, he says sometimes that I remember a video of him saying that all the martial artists are in the bottom of the mountain, and each and everyone go by their own path to the top. And it remembers when you talked this, like when you met Michael J. White, and you see do cuckoo, but he never practiced Bujinkan, right? So he got. I like that spirit he has. Is of course it was an inspiration for us too, and that's come with the question. Do you see? Do you search? Or do you are interested looking at similarities in other martial arts or other martial artists?
Well, I think in many ways, me and Jesse, we share the same interests and everything, but in one way we have a difference, and it's a good difference, I think, because for me it's all about lineage and practicing, one, let's say, one martial art, one school. So for me, I want everything I do, but that doesn't mean to be limited, or to like not look at other things. On the contrary, I want to look at other styles. I want to see, and I want to absorb. I want to, but like I said before, I want to take what the other people are doing and see how is it possible to apply this in my path. So it's not like, okay, wait a minute, Mike Tyson is generating power like this, I'm gonna use this in Gyokuryu. No, but sometimes I can say, wait a minute, what Mike Tyson does, I recognize that in Koku or in Kotoryu. There's this movement. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I can. How does he practice it? How does he use it? I can maybe find a similar way of practicing it and using it. So that's more. That's what I want to do. So, for example, when we went to the Shaolin Temple and we met this master, and I asked him, could you please, like, for example, do these techniques on me, and can I feel them? So I really wanted to feel, for example, when he does a gyaku on me, how does that feel compared to when Kacem does a gyaku on me? Or what angle did he use? Why did he use this angle? And when he's explaining things like how to be in the horse stance, how is that? What similarities are there in this style compared to ours? And sometimes, it can be like I see something and I think, oh, okay, I need to do that in let's say in what I do as well. So but that's when you need to have the connection with the master, because then, for example, Kacem would go like, okay, I can see that you took that from that master. Like, okay, you took that from Shiheng Yi, but that's not how we're doing it. We're doing it this way. And then it's like, okay. So it's again, you're polishing, but sometimes you're polishing, and then like, but wait a minute, if I take this light and I make it, and it looks even more polished here. And then, the master comes and says, oh, wait a minute, no, you need to put that light out, because that's not, you need to polish it correctly instead. But at the same time, that light that you at one point used made you seem, wait a minute, I need to polish this part more. I need to do this. And then you can see things from a different perspective. So again, it's all about, as long as you have the compass and the map, that's what's important for me. So everything always comes back to the root of what I am practicing. I have the lineage. I have my master Kacem, his master Ishizuka Sensei, his master Hatsumi, his master Takamatsu, etc., etc., etc. That's what I'm interested in. But I'm open to ideas.
Okay.
And talking about the masters, a question I didn't ask: how it was meeting Hatsume Sensei for the first time?
Well, meeting Hatsume Sensei for the first time was, I would like to say that, it was very mysterious and I felt this strong presence from him. But, like I said, for me, what really was important, like I said, the moment when I struck him the first time and he just blew air at me, these moments were most interesting to me. But of course, I didn't meet Hatsume Sensei before that, but I had an interaction with him in the way that after just practicing for a few months, I decided to write him a letter and ask him, like, how was the training? I remember I asked, how was the training when you did practice with Takamatsu Sensei compared to the way it is in the Bujinkan now? And he wrote me back. I was nobody. I wrote in Japanese, so I actually took the time to really try to write correct Japanese and everything. And he wrote me back, which was so cool for me. Wow, and he wrote this super nice letter with calligraphy and some text. And still, it's one of my most treasured pieces because it was also much later I found that phrase in the Kotoryu texts and everything, and it's a really cool thing to have. And I kind of wrote to him on a regular basis, and he would always write me back. And so that's to me that was cool, that he would take the time to write to some nobody from Sweden, a beginner, and he took the time to write to me. That really that stuck to me. He's a man of truly giving from himself, because he doesn't have to. He could just pretend that it got lost in the mail or that he gets so much fan mail that but he actually took the time, and that's I think that really that's a part of his personality, and you can see it in Hombu, the way he sits down, or he used to sit down and write calligraphy to everybody that wanted something, and he's a man of gift, truly.
And with Ishizuka Sensei?
Oh, okay. Ishizuka Sensei. That was fun because we were supposed to call him, and he was supposed to pick us up at the train station, and I remember, so I was super nervous. Me and Richard we were at the train station, and I called him, and he was like, "Oh, okay," in Japanese, "Okay, I'm coming." And he came and picked us up, and I was like, "Whoa!" He had a cigarette like this, and he was he looked pretty cool. There was a cool aura to him, and I was like, okay, so I didn't really know what to expect because there weren't that many videos of him. Is he gonna be super nice, or is he gonna be more reserved, more Japanese? How's it gonna be? But he was quite, he was in a rush. So he pretty much just dropped us off at the dojo and was like, "Oh, okay, I'll see you guys later. We'll deal with everything later." And then the next time I saw him was at the actual first class, and he was so cool. He was so nice. He showed the technique on me and everything. And I remember the first impression when he did the movement. When we did the first technique we did with him was Hosoku from Kotoryu. And when he dropped down, it was super low, and then he did the strike to the koe, and then bam, and it was like, whoa, it was such a cool image of him. I still remember that, and he was super nice. He was really nice. But I remember that first trip in 2008. I was young. What was I, 22 or something? And but maybe I was younger in appearance as well. I think maybe I and Ishizuka Sensei probably felt that I was young, and I felt very young around him, and young in a, let's say, almost embarrassing way. And I somehow always, especially when I look back at it, it was I always did something wrong, For example, when I just came back with the bike, I'm like, to dojo, and suddenly Ishizuka Sensei pops out from nowhere. Hi. I'm like, like I jam his bike, into the wall, like, that's the kind of thing that happened like all the time. And at one point, I was I bought a iaito from him that Kacem had arranged for me to buy from him, and he was like, okay, so listen to this. He asked me, do you know how to draw the sword? Okay, so today, even after practicing EI for so many years, I would say no, please show it to me.
Show me.
But of course, I said, yeah, I know, it's okay, And I'm like, no, why did I do that? Why? And he's like,
instant regret.
Yeah, that was like, oh man. And but of course, I would like to think that over the years, over the quite a few interactions I've had with him, that he doesn't, or stopped seeing me as that very young boy. And he in 2015 he came to Sweden, and
okay.
Yeah, and I picked him up at the airport, and I took him to his hotel, and he spent time with me, and he had a class in my dojo for just a few people, and it was a very, very special occasion. And I think when it comes to Ishizuka Sensei, he's a super friendly man, and he can really make you feel that he is your friend, that he is, he can really treat everybody in a good way if he wants to. But at the same time, I have seen so many people again fall into the trap of believing that they are his, let's say, friends or even students, just because he is so open. And again, you don't just, you become a student at the moment when the master explicitly says, you are my student. Otherwise, you are someone who's following, maybe. Yeah, sure. But you're not a student. And so I think that's also, I had many opportunities to be alone with Ishizuka Sensei, to see certain movements, to hear certain things. He told me certain things, but none of this would have been possible if it wasn't for my training with his student, my teacher, Kacem. It's just that's, I mean, I give credit to the practice under my teacher. That's what led me to receive anything that I received from Ishizuka Sensei, as far as teachings or verbal transmission would go.
And the first time with Kacem?
Well, that's like I said in the beginning, in Rotterdam, in Holland, and actually, because I knew that Kacem was fluent in Japanese and everything, so I brought him the letter, the first letter that I received from Hatsume Sensei, to have his take on it, because I had a sushi owner, sushi place owner in Stockholm, who I was practicing my Japanese with, and so he helped me to translate letters and everything. But it was actually a cool character, he I think he was somehow connected to Yakuza. I don't know, actually. Somehow. Yeah, it's a bit mysterious, but that's a whole different story. But to actually hear Kacem's translation and take on a letter of Hatsume Sensei, it's something else. It's much deeper, of course. So yeah, but the first time I saw Kacem, I felt that, okay, now here we have someone who is able to show clearly. You can see that this is a 900-year-old martial art. This is practical. This is no nonsense. And there's so much knowledge behind that. There's so much knowledge of history and knowledge of movement. That's one of the interesting things about Kacem, is that he has like a knack for, and of course because of a lifetime of practice, but he can really read any type of movement and analyze any type of movement, and that's quite rare.
Analyze it in which way?
I think that, I mean, it's kind of like a computer, maybe, you know, like Terminator. You know, everything is instantly, you know. Kacem can basically, you know, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but also maybe not. He can, like, when, you know, just by the way someone is walking or talking, what, you know, he using the arms and legs, he can see what style that person is practicing.
Wow.
And that's also something that, you know, connects to the masters of old. And that's, you know, something that I remember Kacem told me early on, and I think that's true, that Hatsume Sensei, when someone walks into Hombu Dojo, for example, he can immediately read that person. Immediately.
Okay.
You know? So I think I think that's true. I really think that's true. I think Hatsume Sensei is that kind of person. And you know, when you look at how many different kinds of people he has around him and has had around him all the time, it's you know, he can judge your character. I think he can read your character.
Okay.
Right. Santi, go preparing your questions. I would like to ask William, how is the practice in the Hirameki Dojo regularly? You know, if have a structure of the classes, or how is it?
Well, right now we have classes 3 times a week, and you know, sometimes we're just 2 people, sometimes we're 5, 7, something like that. And usually we start with you know, I don't like the phrase warming up, but more like working on dynamic flexibility with kicks, for example, and then, you know, working on kicks against pads maybe, and then we always practice, you know, tsuki and uke in different ways, and then adding strikes like the boshiken or shikanken and these kind of things which you can extract from techniques like Jumonji no Kata, or let's say Koyoku from Kotoryu. So you can take these and make them into drills, and then we take kata that we work on, or if we sometimes isolate a movement from a kata, and sometimes it's we work at different kata from different ryuha that kind of touch on the same subject or the same, let's say, step or way of moving, and then tie everything together with in the end maybe with a weapon or something. So usually each class has a theme, but sometimes you can't really tell the theme beforehand. It appears after, and that's again sometimes I want to feel and take credit that, oh yeah, that was a good move, William, good move, I did well there, you know. But then I realized that no, it's not thanks to me, it's thanks to the art, because the art is made in that way, the techniques are made in that way. It's kind of like you can't really take credit when you put a few pieces of Lego together and it's like, oh, they fit. It's not thanks to me, it's thanks to the creators of Lego, you know. But it still feels good sometimes when you put them together.
Be the piece of Lego. Yeah. Well, the person has to act like I don't know, like how you say it, like a transitor, be part of the flow.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So one question off topic. How do you learn Spanish so good? Better than I.
No. It's my parents bought a house in Spain, like a small house in the 80s. So I spent most of my summers there, and I spoke to the neighbors, and so that's where I learned Spanish.
Okay.
Pretty good job.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Santi, your questions. Yeah.
Okay, William, since the beginning of the interview, we've been talking or mentioned Gyokuryu. What do you think are the misconceptions that people have about Gyokuryu?
Well, first of all, I have to, whenever I ask my teacher questions like that, he says, look, I'm not the Soke. So it's not really my place to answer that. But I can give it from my perspective. So from the way I have learned, I think that one of the misconceptions per se is that Gyokuryu has like circular movement, or it's rather that circular movement is, as a term, is misunderstood. It's more the way Kacem has explained it a bit, and it's theoretical. It's more like it's a bit curved sometimes, or that the movement can be spherical, but not circular in that. Sometimes people, for example, when you look at the basic Ichimonji no kata, they do something like a Jodanuki, and then they go around like this, and then strike like that. The problem with that kind of movement is it only works against someone who is, let's say, either trained to not react or is very bad at fighting. So from that, in my opinion, that already means that it cannot be a martial technique that's 900 years old, or let's say 500 years old, or let's say 300 years old, or 200 years old, or even 100 years old. It can be a few years old if you make it up somewhere and then you do stuff to your students like that. That can work, but there needs to be certain aspects covered for it to be, let's say, practical and realistic. And then again, it's up to how you continue practicing, how you continue polishing, how you continue working on it. But certain things just are not possible. And it's the same with weapons, like, going around in big movements like that. It's just not possible.
Yeah, one of the big misconceptions that I can humildemente voy a decir, in the Bujinkan is that okay, you move like this, but can you do it with a bow, with a naginata, with a shuriken, with anything? And there is only I see on few people that can move like with the taijutsu. I mean, for example, the chinokata and grabbing a nagamaki, for example.
Well, I think that first of all, when you look at what Hatsume Sensei has been doing since the beginning, he has been doing exactly that. He has been using the movements of Gyokuryu, let's say, and then applying it with different weapons. And of course, the fun thing with people is, if we tie back to the question of are there weapons in Gyokuryu, everybody's looking for, okay, do we have the exact kata that says you do this, and then the other one does this, you do this, and then, But when you look at Hatsume Sensei, he has been saying from the beginning that, for example, Gyokuryu and Koshijutsu and everything, it's about applying the movement to any kind of weapon. That's, it's, but to some people, that's like, yeah, but that's using taijutsu with a weapon. That's not a weapon in the school. And but it's how limited your own vision is. And of course, with Kacem, he has, from the first time I met him, when you can see that when he does a movement, and you can clearly see, okay, this is the movement of Gyokuryu. Oh wait, now this is the movement of Kotoryu. And the more you practice at the same time, like I said before, at the same time, the more you can see the differences, but also the common points.
Right.
So you need to be able to practice the movements according to a concept called Itto Manto, like one sword, 10,000 swords. So that means that you have one technique. At the same time, when you're practicing this one technique, you are practicing 10,000 techniques. That needs to be the driving concept. So the same movement that you're doing needs to be able to apply to any kind of weapon. So when you look at how most people are doing, how I learned Jodanuki in the beginning, bam, like a big movement like this, but then you're completely open. And of course, if you practice in a Bujinkan way, it doesn't matter, because you're never going to be punished for that. But if you just translate this movement to weapons, like bam, uke with a sword, and if you move like this with the sword, and you just, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And that's just one aspect where you can see that the movements need to be connected. They need to have the same angle. They need to have the same
structure.
Structure, yes. Yes, exactly. So the structure and the way you're moving needs to be applicable to any kind of weapon and any kind of situation. That's, I think, that's the main feature of Gyokuryu and Kotoryu. In a way, I don't think you can really separate them. You need to somehow keep them as yin and yang. And I think that also helps, because when you practice the Kotoryu techniques, then that helps with the Gyokuryu techniques, and vice versa as well.
Right. Like watching the differences, making that connection to why Gyokko is like this and why Koto is like that.
Yeah.
And how can they work together? And you can apply two martial arts in one.
Yeah.
And also, I was thinking, I don't know, in more complicated weapons, I don't know, like Kusari Fundo or the Nawa,
Yeah.
It had to be the peak of the Daijutsu.
Yeah. I mean, the rope, the Nawa, for example, it was, in the beginning, it was so difficult for me to grasp the reasoning. Why even use that weapon? Why use a rope? For me, it was like, yeah, okay. Even when in the beginning, when I couldn't really understand when Kacem did movements like this, for me it was like, but it was, you can do the exact same thing without the rope, and it would hurt just as much or something like that. But then instead of having this let's say preconceived notion that it's just a rope, it looks weak and everything, when I really understood what it was doing, it was like kind of like the feeling of when Spider-Man goes like puts the web on you, and that was like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute, what is he doing? The web, the Nawa, the rope is everywhere, and so yeah, the rope is a really complicated weapon, and it's I have to say it's a weak point of mine, but I try to practice it as much as possible. But there's so many things. I like the Kusari Fundo a lot. That's again, it's a weak point of mine, but that's why I try to practice it more, because it's like that's also another aspect that Kacem always taught me, to improve your weak points first and foremost. Like, start with the left side. Don't start with the right side. Start with your bad side. And it's the same with weapons. If you're not as good at, there's no point in just like, okay, yeah, I'm a master of bow. Let's do these same old movements all the time. The practice needs to evolve, and you need to become better after your practice session. So that's why if I know I'm not good at this movement with the kusarigama, for example, then I need to practice it more and more, and then that pushes me to do it every day.
Right. Well, that's the thing. The practice from both sides. Also thinking practicing with two different weapons in each hand, right? Right. That's something that I don't see a lot, but I think it's a way, no?
Yes, yes, for sure.
Push it.
For sure. Just like, I saw Kacem use the jute and the kusari fundo together.
Oh, huh.
And I was like, when I saw him do that, it was like my eyes popped out, and I knew that I had to practice that movement a million times. When he was doing like, spinning it and then catching the fundo with the jute. And then, I tried, and then I realized, okay, wait a minute, this doesn't work with every type of chain or every type of weight, etc. So you need to really get to know the weapon as well, the characteristics of the weapon. And especially if you look at weapons like jute and kusari fundo, then you have so many different variations in how they were made. So this is also an aspect of this practice, of this martial art, that you need to have an interest in these old weapons and how they were made and how they were, let's say, varied according to each style. And I think that's why Hatsume Sensei also, the past few years before COVID, he was always telling, at least when I was there, that people need to touch and see the real weapons that were used. The honmono, and I think that's important.
Right. Well, like I said in this text, prepare your question. Preparen sus preguntas si tienen para William. Sandy, questions, your classical questions. Talking about classical.
Okay. I always like to ask the guest two questions. What advice do you have for a person who's starting in Bujinkan as first? And the second question is, what advice do you have for someone who feels that his training is stuck?
Okay.
That they are not improving, and
Okay, so for the first question, I remember. Do you know who Jamie Oliver is? He's a chef. He has like.
Oh yes. The one who screamed a lot.
Yeah, no, that's the Ramsay.
Oh, it's
Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay. Yeah, but Jamie Oliver, he had he was selling like black pepper, and I remember there was a phrase on it, and it was como pimiento, and it said, "A little goes a long way." So in other words, don't try to do too much from the beginning. So I remember when I first started training with Kacem, and I realized, okay, I need to practice this. I put in maybe like in the beginning 5 minutes every day to practice on my own, and then this 5 minutes grew to 10 minutes, and then I found got new movements at the next seminar, and it grew to 15 minutes, and then 20 minutes, and then 20. It grows naturally. So don't try to do too much in the beginning. Just focus on certain basics, and try to improve them and apply them. Like the strike, for example. Try to remove everything that's not necessary. And then for someone who's stuck in training, I think that there comes a point in time when you need to ask yourself why you are stuck, because there can be the aspect that you feel you are stuck, but in reality you're not. You're just everything is just moving in a way that it feels like you're not moving, but you are going forward. But sometimes it's you're not actually going forward, and then you need to ask, maybe, are you with the right teacher? And if a part of you is saying, I'm actually not, because I've seen these videos where I've seen this guy doing seminars and that was really cool, but when I come back to my dojo, we're doing things in this way, and it doesn't really mix, where does this actually work? Then you need to be honest with yourself and ask, why are you practicing? Are you practicing to be friends with the people in your dojo, or are you practicing to actually learn a certain specific martial art? And then I think sometimes you have to make hard decisions.
Okay. When you took that decision of starting with Kacem, it was a start over?
Well,
it was hard?
Let's put it like this way. I had only trained for like 1.5 years before I met Kacem. So I was still fresh. I was like a blank page in a way. But at the same time, the people around me who were senior to me, my teachers, they were not, let's say, they were not fans of Kacem for various reasons. At that time, there was a lot of, politics and stuff. And so I didn't really get the support to practice the way Kacem was teaching things. And also when you're trying to learn something, you can't really apply it. Okay, so let's say you're learning music, and you're just learning like the first notes. Then someone can't tell you, okay, well, play something for me then, play some music, and then like ding 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 ding, it's like, you see, it doesn't sound good, you're not learning correctly. It takes time. And so that's what happened. I couldn't really tell or show people that what I'm learning is correct. I felt it in my heart, what Kacem is doing is right, but I couldn't really show it. I couldn't really demonstrate it enough to convince some other people. So in a way, after a while, it was only natural for me to move away from my old dojo and to the next one, which was led by then a student of Kacem. He was injured a few years later, so he had to stop the practice. But yeah, I mean, several people came with me to the next dojo, and then followed me also to Hirameki as well when I opened up my own dojo.
Right. Well, William, we're going to through the last section. It's called Ukemi section. It's like a ping pong game. I threw a word, and you can answer with one word, with one quote.
Okay. Wow.
It's free. That's why Ukemi. And do it.
All right. Interesting.
So the first question is
interesting. I think you disappeared from me there.
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what did you say? I couldn't hear the word.
Bujinkan.
Oh, Bujinkan. Well, an organization. That's it's an organization created by Hatsume Sensei, and it includes the 9 Ryuha. It's
the 9 Ryuha.
Let's say the ultimate martial art in combination.
And if you have to choose one Ryuha?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna have to say Kotoryu or Gyokoryu. Maybe one of those. I think I don't want to upset the other. Oh man, now I upset the other 7. So no, I have to say all of them. I cannot just say one.
Dojo. The word dojo.
Where I am. Anywhere I am is the dojo. That's what my teacher taught me.
Hittori Keiko.
It's practice. Practice is done alone. That's Hittori Keiko.
Hatsume Sensei.
He's the master. He's the Soke. He's the one who made everything possible. If he hadn't opened the martial arts up the way he did, we would not be sitting here talking.
exactly. That's kind of mind blowing if it wasn't for him.
Yeah.
And of course, the others one, no?
Yeah, and there's like a whole path of people and experiences and happenings and everything that just led to this point.
Yeah. That's the thing that kept me amazing about this.
Yeah. But that's the transmission. That's the lineage. If you can go back even further, that's what I find to be so cool, so interesting, so inspiring about lineage, about history, and that's why I try to, let's say Kacem is a researcher. I'm not using the word research now. I'm using, I try to find as much, let's say, information as possible about the history of our schools and how they connect to other schools based on the information that is found. And it's led by this drive for me to find the connections to the past, because that's what I find interesting. It's like doing research into your own family genealogy, like your own ancestors.
Right. Ishizuka Sensei.
He's a fantastic master. He's deep, very deep. And from the few conversations that I've had with him on my own, with just the two of us, I can say that he's a gentle, very deep, and fantastic person.
Kacem Zoughari.
Same words as I just said for Ishizuka Sensei. And of course, like I said, he's one of the absolute closest people to me in my life. He was there for me, when my mother died a few years ago. He really helped me through that, gave me a lot of advice, and he's always been there for me. And he's a very close person in my life. The one I really, everything I do in martial arts is in a way to connect it to making him proud, and yeah.
The word buju.
I think buju, for me, is a friend that you get from the martial arts, and I have to say that my closest friends in life are the martial artists that I have. Of course, the ones I meet here in my own dojo, people like Richard and Roberto and everybody else, but also people that I have spent time with in other countries, in Japan, for example. Some of them feel, even though I've only maybe even met them just a few times, but they feel like very close friends to me, because we stayed together in the dojo, in a small dojo, slept on the dojo floor, and it kind of bonds people together. So yeah.
A weapon.
A weapon. Well, I would say. Oh, that's a tough one. You had me there. I would say everything. That's what we are trained to think. Everything can be a weapon, and a weapon can also be not a weapon.
I love that answer. A quote in Japanese, in Sweden, and in Spanish.
Okay, or in English.
Or in English too.
Yeah. Then I would have to say you have to thoroughly study each ryuha, what Hatsume Sensei said in 2008. It really stuck with me.
Right. A place in Sweden.
Hirameki Dōjō, of course. It's, I recommend everybody to come here because it's a nice ambience. Also, the Vasa Museum is pretty cool.
Oh, okay. I'll take notes. A place in Japan.
Ishizuka Dojo, for sure. The best place. I mean, it's in a way which is kind of strange, and it's it almost feels presumptuous to say something like that, but it feels like home. It feels like home.
And le voy a decir en español. Un objetivo un propósito.
Un objetivo. ¿Para el futuro o...?
Sí, o personal o actual, que se pueda saber, ¿no?
Pues for me, an objective. I mean, I just want to practice this martial art and become better every day. So, yeah, to learn as much as possible and to practice as much as possible, and to actually to just, if my body is working in a few decades from now, then I would say I fulfilled my objective.
Okay, excelente. Well, thank you very much, William. Santi, any last words?
I wanted to thank you, William, for your time, for sharing this with us, and thank the people on the other side of on the other side of the screen. Thank you for being there and always support us.
Yeah. Well,
thank you very much. The pleasure was mine. It was great to be here, and I'm really honored to have been invited here by you guys.
No, the honor is us. Thank you very much for your time, for your patience, for everything that you share. Tu gentileza, no sé cómo decirlo en inglés.
Gentleness, maybe, I don't know.
Okay. Well, and like I said, Santi, thank you to everyone who's watching this or gonna watch in the future, I hope. Well, it's all yours at closing, William.
Well, I just wish that everybody keeps in practice. That's what I want to say, because that's the driving force behind everything. If Takamatsu Sensei hadn't practiced, if Hatsume Sensei hadn't practiced, if Ishizuka Sensei hadn't practiced, if Kacem hadn't practiced, then I would not be here. So I hope that everybody just keeps in practice and practices something good.
Correctly. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and see you soon, I hope. Bye-bye.
Thank you.